One more hole was drilled in the L-shaped metal piece for holding the SO239 antenna connector to be fixed on the boom of the 7-element VHF Yagi being homebrewed. It was then fixed over the boom near the position of the driven element. 7.25 inch of 75 ohms RG6 television cable was cut and placed inside the circular 3 by 8 inch aluminium pipe of same length for tuning part of the gamma match. As the RG6 cable was thinner than the RG213 given in the design, I retained the outer sheath of the coax and the shield to see how it works. Metallic shield and the aluminium foil inside it was practically shorting with the aluminium pipe at one end where the plastic sheath was removed to expose the inner conductor. The inner conductor of the coax was soldered to the inner conductor of the SO239 connector. The 7.25 inch aluminium pipe was fixed on the driven element with a sliding mechanism using a short piece of 1 inch square aluminium pipe in a way that it was almost 1.5 inch separated from the driven element. It is meant to be slided for tuning the gamma match as the shorting bar. 2 screws were also fixed on the shorting stub, one to the gamma pipe and one to the driven element so as to ensure good electrical contact, as I was using a square aluminium pipe instead of a solid piece of aluminium. I had 10 meters of HLF 200 coaxial cable pre-crimped with PL259 connectors at both ends. One end was connected to the SO239 on the VHF Yagi and other end to the SWR meter. Patch cable from the SWR meter was connected to my quarter-century-old VHF base station, which would work only on low power. As a non-conducting piece of pipe could not be found at that time, I attached a piece of surplus multi-wood board, which was quite thin, to the center of the antenna boom perpendicular to it as the upper part of the mast. As it would not support the weight of the antenna and started bending, I had to reinforce it with a metallic telescopic pole used for painting higher up in the walls. All attachments were made using nylon wires and were not very secure like stainless steel clamps, which I did not get from the local market. Put the antenna up 9 feet inside a first floor room and check the SWR. I was shocked to see an SWR of 10:1. Stopped work for the day as I was quite tired to resume the next day. Meanwhile, I had talked to a senior ham who told me that RG6 coax also should do the job if you adjust the tuning of the gamma match. Several possibilities for initial failure were thought of. Checked all the connections by multimeter and ensured that the contacts to the boom of the elements and antenna contacts were good. The multi-wood piece was replaced by a stronger piece of plastic pipe recycled from an old mop so that the metallic telescopic pole would be at least 2 feet away from the boom, though the recommendation is 3 feet. When the antenna was rehosted inside the room, an SWR of about 2:1 was obtained and I could access 2 repeaters, one at about 4 kilometers and another at about 30 kilometers. As there was a fan and a multi-gym near the antenna with plenty of metal, I decided to conduct further tests outside the room. Moreover, the SWR was shooting back to 10:1 intermittently and I did not know the reason. In 2 places where the screws seemed to be a little loose, additional ties were given with bare multi-strand copper wire, presuming that it could be a loose contact causing the intermittent jumps in SWR. The metallic telescopic pole was tied with nylon wires to the parapet of the first floor balcony and the 7-element VHF beam antenna raised to about 6 meters from the ground, still within the height of the building. Again, SWR was 2:1, but performance was better in terms of reception of repeaters. With the antenna pointing south, Tirur repeater about 30 kilometers away was easily accessed while there was no access to Vadagara repeater about 40 km north. I was happy that the beam antenna is doing its function with significant front to back ratio. Calicut repeater, which is only about 4 km away, could still be accessed well with the beam pointed almost perpendicular to it, presumably because of proximity. When the beam was turned north, Vadagara repeater could be accessed while I lost access to Thiru repeater in the opposite direction, again showing the directional gain of the 7-element VHF Yagi. As the SWR was still not in the acceptable range, the 7-element VHF Yagi antenna was lowered to adjust the gamma match. While attempting to adjust the gamma match, the soldered joint between the inner conductor of the coax and the SO239 connector broke. It was because the shorting step was not well fixed, being a square lumen pipe than a solid piece of aluminium. The shorting step was also at an angle because I had fixed the L-shaped metal piece with the SO239 connector too close to the driven element. Push the inner conductor of the coax back into the SO239 without soldering and apparently fixed it. The shorting step was pulled back a little as tuning. Of course, it did not work and the SWR was higher at 2.5:1. With a lot of work done single-handedly, decided to call it a day and continue on another day.